On January 28, 2025, President Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, proposed implementing universal tariffs on U.S. imports starting at 2.5% and increasing by the same amount each month, potentially reaching up to 20%. This strategy aims to provide businesses and countries time to adjust and negotiate better trade terms. However, President Trump has indicated a preference for more substantial tariffs. He announced plans to impose tariffs on imported computer, chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals in the near future, criticizing current subsidies and suggesting that higher tariffs would discourage imports and boost domestic production. These proposed tariffs are expected to be significantly higher than the initial 2.5%. Since assuming office on January 20, 2025, President Donald Trump has rapidly enacted a range of tariffs aimed at major U.S. trading partners, especially Canada, Mexico, and China. These actions form part of his administration's comprehensive plan to tackle issues like illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and trade disparities. But so far, the Trump administration has imposed tariffs on several countries, mainly their allies. On his inauguration day, President Trump declared a 25% tariff on all imports from Canada and Mexico. The administration defended this move as essential to fight illegal immigration and the surge of drugs, particularly fentanyl, into the U.S. These tariffs are scheduled to begin on February 1, 2025. Canada has strongly opposed these tariffs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau asserted that such actions would damage the Canadian economy and adversely affect American consumers and businesses. He stressed the need to preserve a robust economic partnership between the two countries and indicated that Canada might consider retaliatory measures if necessary. Canada has expanded its efforts beyond counter-tariffs, actively seeking collaboration with international partners, including the European Union, Denmark, Mexico, and others, to formulate a collective response. Canadian Foreign Minister Mélanie Joly has announced plans to engage with her counterparts in allied nations such as Britain, Mexico, and several EU member states to develop a coordinated strategy against the potential US tariffs. She emphasized the importance of pragmatism in these discussions and noted ongoing conversations in European capitals regarding possible retaliatory measures. Chrystia Freeland, former finance minister and a leading candidate to succeed Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, has proposed convening an international summit. This summit would include leaders from Mexico, Denmark, Panama, and the EU to coordinate a joint response to the challenges posed by the US administration's tariff threats and sovereignty assertions. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum similarly denounced the tariffs, arguing they wouldn't effectively solve immigration and drug trafficking problems. She emphasized the necessity for cooperative efforts between the US and Mexico to address these complex issues, and warned that the tariffs could strain diplomatic ties. Beyond targeting North American neighbors, President Trump has suggested an additional 10% tariff on all imports from China, citing China's involvement in producing and distributing fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid worsening the US drug crisis. This tariff is also set to start on February 1, 2025. China's government has responded by highlighting the mutual advantages of US-China trade relations and expressing a desire for constructive discussions to settle trade disagreements. Broadening his trade policy, President Trump has warned the European Union that it may face tariffs if it does not increase its purchases of American oil and gas. He asserted that the EU needs to reduce its trade deficit with the US by significantly boosting energy purchases. Otherwise, tariffs on European imports will be imposed. Trump's stance hasn't stopped at tariffs. He has also expressed interest in purchasing Greenland and has not ruled out the possibility of using military means to achieve this. In response to US President Donald Trump's renewed interest in acquiring Greenland, Denmark has taken several measures to reinforce its sovereignty over the territory and strengthen alliances within Europe. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has been actively engaging with European leaders to consolidate support against US pressures. She emphasized the importance of European unity in the face of external threats, stating, "We must stand together in Europe." Frederiksen held discussions with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and French President Emmanuel Macron focusing on enhancing European cooperation and security. Chancellor Scholz underscored that borders should not be altered by force, implicitly addressing the US stance on Greenland. To bolster its defense capabilities in the Arctic region, Denmark has announced a significant investment of approximately $2.1 billion. Construction of 3 new Arctic naval vessels, acquisition of surveillance drones, and enhancement of satellite monitoring systems. These initiatives aim to strengthen Denmark's military presence in Greenland and affirm its commitment to the territory's security. Denmark is seeking to rally European allies to secure its control over Greenland. Prime Minister Frederiksen is engaging in talks with key European leaders, aiming to unite Europe against Trump's threats at an upcoming Brussels Security Summit. Discussions include possibly stationing European troops in Greenland, although Denmark has yet to request this formally. In response to these threats, Denmark has announced new military investments to boost its defense in Greenland, a region of growing strategic importance due to climate change-induced navigability and resource availability. Greenland's Prime Minister Mute B. Ajid has reiterated that while the island is open to increased cooperation with the United States, its people do not wish to become Americans. He emphasized Greenland's aspiration for self-determination and independence, stating that the territory belongs to its own people. As a key trading partner, the EU is already experiencing rising tensions with the US following multiple energy crises caused by Ukraine halting Russian energy transit, Qatar stopping gas exports to Europe, and Iran ceasing supplies due to unexplained technical issues. The EU is facing an increasingly unstable energy environment. These problems were exacerbated by a new wave of US sanctions on Russian oil and gas, resulting in a surge in global energy prices. The EU has borne the brunt of these consequences, with gas prices skyrocketing. Public dissatisfaction with the European Commission is growing, and inflation continues to weigh on economies across the continent. Adding to the strain, Trump has announced plans to impose further tariffs on European products, further jeopardizing the already fragile EU-US relationship. These measures are expected to have long-term repercussions on the EU economy, worsening existing challenges and threatening the region's economic stability. In response, the EU is taking strong steps to mitigate potential impacts, recognizing the need to reduce its reliance on US trade and demonstrate its economic resilience. The bloc has accelerated efforts to diversify its global trade partnerships. A key element of this strategy is the recently signed free trade agreement with Mexico, a US neighbor. This agreement not only strengthens the EU's position in North America, but also signals its ability to forge significant alliances outside of US influence. Additionally, the EU has secured a landmark free trade deal with South American countries, reinforcing its commitment to expanding its global trade network ahead of Trump's possible tariffs. Through these initiatives, the EU aims to shield itself from potential US economic pressures while asserting its role as a major player in global trade. These partnerships extend beyond economic benefits. They also act as geopolitical statements of the EU's intent to navigate and counter the challenges posed by a second Trump presidency. In this video, we explore the EU's retaliatory measures and their potential impact on the US-European Union relationship. The European Union and Mexico have finalized a modernized trade agreement, significantly strengthening their economic partnership. This updated agreement, completed on January 17, 2025, aims to reduce both parties' economic dependence on the United States, especially in anticipation of possible US tariff increases under President Donald Trump. Key aspects of the EU-Mexico trade agreement: tariff removal. The agreement removes high tariffs on various EU exports to Mexico, including agricultural products like cheese, poultry, pork, pasta, apples, jams, chocolate, and wine. This is expected to significantly boost EU agricultural food exports. Market access. EU businesses will gain improved access to Mexican government contracts, investments, and service sectors, including financial services and telecommunications. This ensures EU firms receive equal treatment with Mexico's other preferred trade partners, such as the US and South Korea. Sustainable development promises. The agreement includes enforceable commitments on labor rights and environmental protections, underscoring both parties' dedication to sustainable development. Critical raw material supply. The deal seeks to enhance the supply chain of essential raw materials, ensuring a sustainable and secure supply crucial for various industries. This modernized agreement updates the original EU-Mexico Global Agreement, active since 2000. The new accord is designed to reflect the evolving economic landscape and deepen the strategic partnership between the EU and Mexico. The agreement now requires ratification by both EU and Mexican legislators before implementation. This process is expected to be scrutinized by various stakeholders, including European farmers concerned. About increased competition, the European Union and the Mercosur bloc, comprising Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, have completed an extensive trade agreement after 25 years of negotiations. This agreement aims to establish one of the world's largest free trade zones, encompassing over 700 million people and nearly 25% of global GDP. Key elements of the EU-Mercosur trade agreement: tariff reductions. The agreement plans to eliminate tariffs on over 90% of goods traded between the EU and Mercosur countries, potentially saving EU companies around 4 billion EUR annually in export duties. Market access. EU industries, including automobiles and chemicals, will gain better access to Mercosur markets, while South American agricultural products such as beef and poultry will receive increased entry into the EU, subject to specific quotas. Sustainability commitments. Both parties have agreed to uphold the Paris Climate Agreement and implement measures to prevent deforestation by 2030. The deal includes dispute resolution mechanisms to enforce these commitments. Challenges and opposition. Despite potential economic benefits, the agreement faces resistance within the EU, especially from farmers and environmental groups. Critics argue that the influx of South American agricultural products could undermine European farmers and raise environmental standard concerns. French President Emmanuel Macron has voiced strong reservations, seeking additional safeguards and sustainable commitments. Ratification process. For the agreement to take effect, it must be ratified by all 27 EU member states and approved by the European Parliament. Given the existing opposition, particularly from countries with significant agricultural sectors, the ratification process may encounter obstacles and could take several years. Early engagements and formalization. After World War II, the US's involvement with Europe laid the groundwork for its relationship with what would later become the European Union. The Marshall Plan in 1948 was pivotal in rebuilding Europe, providing financial aid to war-torn nations to stabilize their economies and encourage regional cooperation. The US also supported the creation of the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951, seeing it as a means to prevent future conflicts between France and Germany by integrating key industries. In 1954, the EU's predecessor established its delegation in Washington, D.C. to manage increasing economic ties. This relationship deepened with the creation of the United States mission to the European communities in Brussels in 1961, symbolizing a mutual commitment to fostering political and economic cooperation. Formation of security alliances. Immediately after World War II, the United States emerged as a global leader, actively shaping the post-war international order. Recognizing the escalating threat from the Soviet Union, the US took decisive action to contain Soviet expansion and promote democratic values. Establishment of NATO, 1949. In response to the Soviet Union's growing influence in Eastern Europe, and actions like the Berlin blockade, the United States led the formation of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in 1949. This collective defense pact included the US, Canada, and several Western European nations, committing each member to mutual defense in case of an attack. The US played a key role not only as a financial supporter, but also as a military ally, stationing troops in Europe and appointing General Dwight D. Eisenhower as NATO's first Supreme Commander. The Truman Doctrine, 1947. President Harry S. Truman introduced the Truman Doctrine in 1947, marking a significant shift in U.S. foreign policy. This doctrine declared that the U.S. would support free peoples resisting subjugation by armed minorities or external pressures, specifically targeting the spread of communism. Initially, it provided substantial economic and military aid to Greece and Turkey to prevent them from falling under Soviet influence. This policy laid the foundation for the US's containment strategy throughout the Cold War. Marshall Plan, 1948. Complementing these efforts, the US launched the Marshall Plan in 1948, a massive economic aid program aimed at rebuilding war-torn Europe by revitalizing European economies. The plan sought to create stable conditions where democratic institutions could thrive, thereby reducing the appeal of communism.